likely the trickiest topic that we're going to cover today, but I'm going to do my best to not step on anyone's toes here and just sort of express these ideas openly. When I survey the world of musical content creators, I see a spectrum happening. On the farthest end of the spectrum, we have cover artists. These are musicians who focus all of their content around covering songs that other people have written. The other end of the spectrum would be artists who solely create unique or original content. And even on the furthest ends of this spectrum, everyone is kind of a hybrid. Cover artists are not creating completely unoriginal content, and those who do create completely original content are very rarely being 100% original. So I think everyone can place themselves on this spectrum somewhere, and many drummers have moved up and down this spectrum over the years. This is not a spectrum of ethics or morality, but rather it's a way to quantify our creativity as content creators. Some types of content, some content styles are objectively more creative than others, but with that said, there is room for creativity within all content styles. Hopefully that makes sense. So let's first discuss drum covers. Now, even within the drum cover world, there's a spectrum of creativity. The most original or creative way to cover a song objectively is to just cover the entire song, meaning you create or recreate all parts of that song, like the instrumentation, and you produce an entirely new version of that musical work. You re-record the bass, the guitar, the piano. It's a complete musical recreation of that song. But as drummers, this is not what we're usually doing. What drummers do most often is take the original recording from the artist or the band, and we just play drums over top of it. And I tend to look at this as less of a cover and more of like a play along of some kind. And so looking at that spectrum of originality, I think everyone needs to ask themselves if they are comfortable being exclusively on the farthest end of this spectrum. When we purely do drum covers of other musicians' work, and we only play the exact same notes that that drummer has written over top of the original recording of that song, we are creating the most unoriginal content that we could possibly make. And genuinely, I want to ask you this: what could be less original than doing this style of drum cover? In my eyes, you have to outright steal someone's creative concept or actual content to be less original than you are when you're playing their drum parts over their song. And so for me, this is the reason that I don't personally touch drum covers. It feels like I'm not creating enough. It feels like I'm leaning too heavily on a work that I didn't actually contribute anything to. And that final piece of content doesn't truly belong to me in a weird way. And this is a personal philosophy that I have allowed to shape my own creative process over the years. But I want to be clear that by no means are you or anyone else obligated to adhere to this same philosophy. It's just how I see things. Now keep in mind, I'm not advocating that we should stop doing drum covers. That's not at all what I'm saying. Music is inherently really fluid, really communal, and I think for those reasons it's only natural that people want to watch drummers play over popular songs. And covering songs is fun. It's not like I've never done one, I have done them, and they're a blast to make. So the argument could be made that if you enjoy making covers and people enjoy watching those covers, what's the problem here? Isn't this a win-win situation? In my humble opinion, yes and no. Time and time again, we see successful YouTube cover artists or cover drummers, they start to deviate away from purely doing drum covers the longer they do them. We can look at drummers like Luke Holland or Casey Cooper, who are both good friends of mine. And these drummers both got started by doing almost exclusively drum covers. But as you look at their respective careers over the last decade or so, drum covers are no longer the exclusive focal point of their careers. They have diversified their portfolios, so to speak. So calling Luke or Casey YouTube drum cover artists, that's not really an accurate description of their careers at this point. In fact, for both of them, I would say they are less of cover artists now than they ever have been before. And so for me, I see doing drum covers as a proven and a tested method of reaching an audience. The verdict is in: people like watching drum covers, and if you cover a well-known song, you have a decent chance of getting views or some kind of attention on that video. But if we're talking about a sustainable, profitable, fulfilling, long career path, I think we're going to need to expand beyond drum covers. Because in reality, there are very few people who have created those kinds of careers purely by covering other artists' music. In my perspective, the idea that being a drum cover artist is a career is simply not true. There is really almost no one on earth that only does drum covers and that is their job. Now, drum covers might be the mechanism that you use to get a foothold in the industry, and I can't knock anyone for doing that. I think that's closer to the story of Luke, closer to the story of Casey or Cobus or a variety of other YouTube cover artists back in the day. But I would encourage you to think long-term about doing drum covers and what role is this going to have in your career. If doing drum covers goes as well as you ever imagined and you get millions of views and subscribers and followers, then what? What comes after the drum covers? At a certain point, it seems to me that almost everyone eventually has to drift closer to the center of this spectrum of originality. And if you arrive at some point of success in your career and the only skill you have ever invested in is learning other people's drum parts, I believe there's an argument to be made that you have not set yourself up for success. Luke is a great example of somebody who has stacked many other skill sets on top of his ability to create really great drum covers. While Luke has done note-for-note drum covers in the past, his style progressed into playing his own creative drum parts against the music, instead of just mimicking it or miming along with the original drum parts. He's also taken on massive tours, session work, all things that are totally outside of the YouTube world. He's written tons of original music, he's done clinics and camps, and found many other outlets and ways to create content, make money, and reach new audiences. Same with Casey. He's increasingly spent more time making his videos more personal and connecting with his audience in new ways. He talks on camera often. He isn't afraid to explore new content styles, and he collaborates with a lot of different artists on his channel. Casey, in my eyes, consistently goes way outside of the box when it comes to his content style, and by no means does he rely on drum covers to sustain his livelihood. Even if that's how things started, clearly that's not what he's doing now. So if you're someone who has already started doing drum covers and that's where your thoughts and attention are all focused right now, I'm not trying to derail you. Instead, I just want to encourage you to open your mind to some other possibilities regarding the content that you're going to produce. It's a big world, and we are all capable of covering songs just as much as we're capable of creating our own original, unique, exclusive, proprietary content. My advice is, if you're new to this game, do it all. Cover the song, make the paradiddle lesson, make the original content, try the weird video style that you're not sure if it's gonna work. Do it all, do everything. Explore the spectrum that I've laid out for you today in this video and trust that your musical identity and your creative preferences will take shape along the way. I promise that is what will happen. And I will leave you with this closing thought, which hopefully applies to everything we've learned throughout this 3-hour drum filming course. If no one has reminded you recently, the internet